and this is a little different from any other big book meeting that you may have gone to before, okay? Most big book meetings, you go around the room and you read a portion of the big book. When I was new, does anybody need a big book? It's always a good idea to have a big book in a big book meeting. So, when we would do that with the big book, what would happen with me when I was new is I would sit there and go, they read some portion of some book. I have no idea, right? And not until somebody explained to me how the big book was put together did it make sense. And then I walked through it with the sponsor and it made a whole lot more sense. So what we do at this meeting is we do an overview of the 164 pages of the big book first, and then we read what we're reading, so you know exactly why we're reading what we're reading. This is our big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? It's separated in two sections. You've got your stories and you've got the first 164 pages, which outlines the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? The 164 pages that outlines the program does not change, although the stories have changed over the course of the 4 different editions that we've had. We've taken out some stories and put in some stories in almost each of the 4 editions that we've had. So, there is a book called Experience, Strength, and Hope, and if you have that book in the 4th edition, that includes all the stories taken out of the big book for the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd edition. So with that book in the 4th edition, you have everything ever written in the big book, except one story, which we took out a portion of our Southern friend at the end. So, that would not be in here. So let's go over, in this meeting, we only go over the first 164 pages, the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, okay? Now during the reading, there's only one person that reads. That would be me. But during the reading we have crosstalk, so we encourage you to shout out answers, shout out questions, or have any kind of, you know, if you don't understand a certain line or paragraph, just shout it out, go, what's that mean? Hold on, you lost me. Okay, we have a lot of people here with a lot of time that understand the big book, and it's really encouraging when we kind of talk back and forth like we would when you're sitting on the couch with a sponsor going over the book. Okay, so let's begin. This is the contents page that outlines the first 164 pages of the big book. Preface says, first off, we don't change the 164. There's a strong sentiment against any radical change being made. And we hope when you read this, or the stories in the back, that you might go, I felt like that. Wait a minute, I might be an alcoholic. I think this thing might work for me. In other words, me too, right? Then we have 4 different forwards for the 4 different editions. The first one says that the main purpose of this book is to show you precisely how we have recovered. It's our basic text. It's not read once, put it on the shelf. It's something we read over and over again with each other. So our basic text is, the main purpose of it is to show you precisely how we have recovered. So there's clear-cut directions in the big book. Different from suggestions. Suggestion, let's say 90 meetings in 90 days. Very good suggestion. Is it a direction right out of the big book? No. But it's a good suggestion. So sometimes we hear things in meetings and we think they're the rules of AA, but they're not. Our clear-cut directions are in the first 164 pages, okay? So we point those out as we go. In the forward to the 2nd edition, we throw in some history, okay? How Bill and Bob met, our 2 founders, how they came across Bill Dotson, the man on the bed, and some other really cool stuff about how we've grown. And then the 3rd and the 4th edition also talks about the different countries and how we've come about in more groups over the years. The doctor's opinion is where the first 164 pages starts. That is not Dr. Bob, our first founder. It's Dr. Silkworth, okay? He's the one that detoxed Bob. So he pretty much is the one that, let's say if we went to the hospital or to a detox one more time, and the doctor looks and goes, you again. Sorry, we don't have a pill that'll fix you. There's no synthetic knowledge that can fix you. You've got this allergy. He describes the allergy. If that confuses you, it's like we've got a bug, right? We got something that's not just quite right with us, and it has to do with alcohol. Okay? Frothy emotional appeal doesn't suffice. We're irritable, restless, discontented, and the only thing that will work is some kind of spiritual slap on the head, which he seems to say, whatever these men have to say that follow, seems to work. But for us doctors, we have nothing synthetic that we've made, no pill that can fix you guys of what you got. So continue reading would be his suggestion, right? But some really good stuff that we can find there. Then Bill tells his story. Bill Wilson, our first founder, right? He talks about crossing that line. He talks about trying one more time on his own, depression, stealing from his wife's purse. Then he thought he had it, and one more time. Scared to walk across the street. And then the message being carried to him and the importance of carrying it to another. In the next chapter, chapter 2, there is a solution. It's almost like all of us chime in, the others that are sober at that time in 1939. And there were only maybe less than 100 of us. And we all kind of chimed in and said, you know what? A lot of us were just as hopeless as Bill. If you think you might be one of us, a real Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, come along for the ride. We have a solution. In More About Alcoholism, we read it in the beginning of a meeting, right? It starts off with, nobody wants to admit that they're bodily and mentally different than their fellows, right? So it's not surprising that it's hard for us to first go, I'm an alcoholic, right? So, like in a participation meeting, we have different smaller stories. Jim the car salesman, Fred the accountant, and in there, even the jaywalker, you might go, that's me. Up until this point, we've mentioned spirituality a lot, so we've got a whole chapter dedicated to don't overthink the God thing. If you got a God, good. If you don't worry about it. Come along for the ride. Just realize you lack that power to be able to do this thing on your own and get sober. No human power, right? I seem to have lacked that power to be able to get sober by myself. Something bigger than me is going to have to work. All we're saying is if you realize that, you can start on the steps. Start on the action, which starts in chapter 5, how it works. Remember, when we do this reading, chapter 5, in the beginning of a meeting, it'll say our description of the alcoholic. In the chapter to the agnostic, what you've read so far makes clear these 3 pertinent ideas. Oh my gosh, me too. I'm an alcoholic. No human power is going to be able to relieve me of alcoholism. Something bigger than me is going to have to work, right? If you're convinced of this, you're ready to do step 3. Learn about self-will run riot. I'm trying to run the whole show. And when I can go, what you got for me, God? The keystone, that 3rd step prayer, and how to do an inventory on our resentments, fear, and sex. And all that's covered in chapter 5. And we start learning a few really good facts about ourselves. So in chapter 6, into action, what do? We have a sponsor and we start talking to them about it. They help us see those facts that we just wrote in our inventory. We also find some character defects, some character assets as well, and maybe some amends and some ways to clear up the wreckage of our past. How to keep that clean by doing a 10-step and going, oh, throughout my day, did I steal something from somebody? Did I lie? Did I cheat? Again? Most likely, yeah. What do I do? How do I stay spiritually fit while I'm trying to work these steps? Or after I'm done, how do I continue? Then, step 11, how do we keep that going? Prayer and meditation, and we move into chapter 7, working with others. And what is that? After I've done all these steps and the promises have come true and I'm feeling a little free, how do I carry that message to somebody else? How do I reach my hand out to the newcomer? I don't talk down to them. I don't criticize, right? I don't come from any moral, spiritual hilltop. What I do is I reach out my hand and go, hey, I've worked these steps. I've had some experience working these steps out of this book. If you need my help, here you go, right? It's a real beautiful chapter on how we talk to the newcomer. It doesn't say that we sit there and go, shut up, you have nothing to say. It says, encourage him to talk a little bit about himself. Not for 45 minutes in a 1-hour meeting, but, you know, we want to know whether or not you belong here and welcome you here and let us tell you a little bit about ourselves. Then we move into the next 3 chapters is where we're at now. So we're not in this despair, hopelessness, one more time, I don't know how, fear, insecurity. We've done some steps. We've learned some facts about ourselves. We've got a new freedom, a new happiness. We're starting to share the message with others. But remember, this book was written in 1939. When we first put this out, we didn't just think it's going to be bought by a lot of alcoholics. No, it's going to be bought by their wives, their family members, their employers, and maybe given to the alcoholic. So we've got 3 chapters we're going to talk a lot about. Last week we finished up to the wives, which describes the 4 different stages of the alcoholic and what to do if you've got an alcoholic at home. The beginning of Al-Anon. And we're going to be right here today in the family afterwards. Okay? That's what we're reading tonight. A Vision for You is where Bill sums it all up, and we read it at the end of a meeting. He says, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. Here's our book, Don't Die. And our first story is always Dr. Bob's. Any questions so far? No! Yes, no, yes. So, we are going to be at the family afterwards, which will be on page 122. Now, like I said, remember, if there's anything that you have a question on when we're going through this, shout it out, okay? Feel free to go, I have no idea what's Armistice Day, you know, and we'll all answer it. I love it. You're fine. All right. So we're on chapter 9, the family afterwards. Our women folk, now what is he talking about there? We just read to the wives. That's what he's talking about, okay? Our women folk have suggested certain attitudes a wife may take with the husband who is recovering. Perhaps they created the impression that he is to be wrapped in cotton wool and placed on a pedestal. Last week we had some suggestions that said that we were supposed to be kind and not mean to our fellow alcoholic. So perhaps we got the impression that the alcoholic is supposed to be wrapped in cotton wool and placed on a pedestal. Successful readjustment means just the opposite. So in other words, now, last week we also talked about to the wives. It could be read as if working with others is when we first put our hand out to the newcomer, right? To the wives, there's a lot of suggestions about what to do after we've come and when we work and some of the things in dealing with somebody we sponsor or others in the program after they've been around 6 months or more. They're not newcomers anymore. How do we treat them, right? Same thing's going to hold true, almost like our first year of sobriety, how we deal with those that are trying to get back with their family and the problems that we will have once we've been here a little while, okay? Successful readjustment means just the opposite. All members of the family should meet upon common ground of, these are directions, tolerance, understanding, and love. I love how the words change toward this part of the book. It's not about fear, insecurity, It's more, insecurity, self-pity, self-seeking. It's more about tolerance, love, helpfulness. This involves a process of deflation. The alcoholic, his wife, his children, his in-laws, each one is likely to have fixed ideas about the family's attitude toward himself or herself. Each is interested in having his or her wishes respected. We find the more one member of the family demands the other concede to him, the more resentful they become. This makes for discord and unhappiness. Remember when we talked about self-will back in chapter 5, right? And why? Is it not because each one wants to play the lead, the director, just like we did when we were dealing with self-will and riot? Is it not each trying to arrange the family show to his liking? Is it not unconsciously trying to see what he can take from the family rather than give? Cessation of drinking, giving up drinking, is but the first step away from a highly strained abnormal condition. Everybody know what the highly strained abnormal condition is? Us! A doctor said to us, years of living with an alcoholic is almost sure to make any wife or child neurotic. The entire family is, to some extent, ill. Let families realize as they start their journey that all will not be fair weather. How many people got sober and after their first week coming to meetings, everything got happy at home? They trusted us, gave us the keys back to the car, right? Parents said, oh, you can have the kids back, all that stuff. Not likely, huh? But sometimes we quickly want these things back. If the family knows that it's not going to all turn up roses that first week, that first month, sometimes that first year, all will not be fair weather. Fair weather being like sunshine, not rainy out, right? Each in his turn may be footsore and may straggle. What does footsore mean? Anybody have any questions on these? These are the ones that people asked questions of before. Footsore. It's kind of like we were walking up pebbles and rocks, carrying the alcoholic up and down every day for each day until they got sober. And we got blisters on our feet and everything else. And the alcoholic gets sober and goes, what's wrong? Why are you limping? You overreact. It was not that bad. And the family's like, oh my gosh, right? They're footsore. They may straggle. There will be alluring shortcuts and bypaths down which they may wander and lose their way. Suppose we tell you some of the obstacles a family will meet. Suppose we suggest how they may be avoided, even converted to good use for others. The family of an alcoholic longs for the return of happiness and security. They remember when Father was romantic, thoughtful, and successful. Today's life is measured against that of other years, and when it falls short, the family may be unhappy. Family confidence in Dad is rising high. The good old days will soon be back, they think. Dad just got out of rehab and he's home. Oh my gosh, everything's going to be perfect. It's going to go so well. Sometimes they demand that Dad bring them back instantly these happy days. God, they believe, almost owes them recompense on a long overdue account. In other words, they're due. God owes them their dad back in happy times because of what they've paid, the price they paid before this. But the head of the house has spent years in pulling down the structure of business, romance, friendship, health. These things are now ruined or damaged. It will take time to clear away the wreck. Though old buildings will eventually be replaced by finer ones, the new structures will take time to complete. Father knows he's to blame. Father being the alcoholic. So if you're a female, it would be you as well. But Father knows he is to blame. It may take him many seasons of hard work to be restored financially. Here is a direction. But he shouldn't be reproached. Does anybody know? Reproached, criticized. Okay? So the alcoholic, although trying to put things back together, should not be criticized by us in the rooms or by his family. Perhaps he will never have much money again, but the wise family will admire him for what he is trying to be rather than for what he is trying to get. Now and then the family will be plagued with spectres from the past, for the drinking career of almost every alcoholic has been marked by escapades, funny and humiliating, shameful and tragic. The first impulse will be to bury these skeletons in a dark closet and padlock the door. The family may be possessed by the idea that future happiness can be based only upon forgetfulness of the past. We think that such a view is self-centered and in direct conflict with a new way of living. Why? Because we have to look at our past, right? We don't want to be, we don't talk about those days. We have to, because we have to do an inventory, Henry Ford once made a wise remark to the effect that experience is the thing of supreme value in life. That is true only if one is willing to turn to the past to a good account. Only if we're going to make the bad stuff in the past good. Here's a direction. We grow by our willingness to face and rectify errors and convert them to our assets. The alcoholic's past thus becomes the principal asset, the main positive of his family, and frequently it is almost the only one. Remember we talked about Al-Anon last week. This painful past may be of infinite value to other families still struggling with their problem. We think each family which has been relieved owes something to those who have not. And when the occasion requires, each member of it should be only too willing to bring former mistakes, no matter how grievous, out of their hiding places. Showing others who suffer we were given help is the very thing which makes life seem so worthwhile to us now. So in Al-Anon, they're going to share stories of how they dealt with waiting for the phone to ring. Is he gone? Are they dead? Did they get arrested, right? They may share those stories amongst themselves with somebody that's going through that right now, right? Just like we share stories in here. A direction. Cling to the thought that in God's hands, the dark past is the greatest possession you have, the key to life and happiness for others. With it, you can avert death and misery for them. It is possible to dig up past misdeeds so they become blight, even veritable plague. For example, we know of situations which the alcoholic or his wife have had love affairs. In the first flush of a spiritual experience, they forgave each other and drew closer together. The miracle of reconciliation was at hand. Then, under one provocation or another, what's a provocation? You poke the bear. You didn't wash the dishes, you say something nasty or snide as you're walking out of the room, and it starts a fight, right? A provocation. We provoked it. Okay? So under one provocation or another, the aggravated one would unearth the old affair and angrily cast its ashes about. A few of us have had these growing pains, and they hurt a great deal. Husbands and wives have sometimes been obliged to separate for a time until new perspective, new victories over hurt pride could be re-won. In most cases, the alcoholic survived this ordeal without relapse, but not always. So we think that unless some good or useful purpose is to be served, past occurrences should not be discussed. Does that mean that we avoid doing those amends when we get to that step? No. No, that's not what they're saying here. We're talking about when we're angry, we don't throw it out as a dagger. We families of Alcoholics Anonymous keep few skeletons in the closet. Everyone knows about the other alcoholic's trouble. This is a condition which, in ordinary life, would produce untold grief. There might be scandalous gossip, laughter at the expense of other people, and a tendency to take advantage of intimate information. Among us, these are rare occurrences. We do talk about each other a great deal, but we almost invariably temper such talk by a spirit of love and tolerance. That would be a direction, right? We temper our talk by a spirit of love and tolerance. Another principle we observe carefully, which would be a direction, we do not relate intimate experiences of another person unless we are sure he would approve. We find it better, when possible, to stick to our own stories. So that brings up a good point. I was going to tell about what you did the other day. So it was so funny, and she didn't want me to say, but I heard that she had done this, and right? Do we do that in the middle of a meeting, or? No. Or at the podium or anything. We don't unless we have that person's expressed permission to share that historical, funny story. We wouldn't want our stories told that way, right? So we're not going to also tell them to family members the same way, right? We respect each other's stories. A man may criticize or laugh at himself, and it will affect others favorably. But criticism or ridicule coming from another often produces the contrary effect. Members of a family should watch such matters carefully, for one careless, inconsiderate remark has been known to raise the very devil. How many people have heard this before? We alcoholics are sensitive people. It must be true. It's in the big book. It takes some of us a long time to outgrow that serious handicap. So, many alcoholics are enthusiastic. They run to extremes. At the beginning of recovery, a man will take, as a rule, one of two directions. He may either plunge into frantic attempt to get on his feet in business. He may be so enthralled by his new life that he talks or thinks of nothing else. In either case, certain family problems will arise. With these, we have had experiences galore. So what do we do when we first get sober? Well, I went to a couple meetings, but now I got to get a job, got to get my car back, got to get the kids back. No, I don't have time for the meeting right now. I'll check in later, though. I think I'll go maybe over the weekend. Just got busy. And I get really busy trying to get my life back together, right? And then, on the other hand, maybe I don't get a job, don't try to do this, don't try to, but I'm sitting in the meetings all day long. So we sometimes go to extremes in our very first few weeks. It doesn't say that's wrong. It's just saying we've had experience in both directions, right? We think it's dangerous if he rushes headlong at his economic problem. Money problem. The family will be affected also, pleasantly at first, as they feel their money troubles are about to be solved. Then, not so pleasantly, as they find themselves neglected. Dad may be tired at night and preoccupied during the day. He may take a small interest in the children and may show irritation when reproved for his delinquencies. Irritable, restless. I'm feeling a little discontent when I'm at home around them. If not irritable, he may seem dull and boring, not gay and affectionate as the family would like him to be. Gay means like happy, party, yes. Mother may complain of inattention. They are all disappointed and often let him feel it. Beginning with such complaints, a barrier arises. A new wall goes up, right? He is straining every nerve to make up for lost time. He's striving to recover fortune, money, the bank account, his reputation, and feels he's doing very well. Sometimes mother and children don't think so. Having been neglected and misused in the past, They think Father owes them more than they're getting. They want him to make a fuss over them. They expect him to give them the nice times they used to have before he drank so much, and to show his contrition for what they suffered, to make up for it, to make amends for it, pay him back for what they suffered. But Dad doesn't give freely of himself. Resentment grows. He becomes still less communicative now. Sometimes he explodes over a trifle. The family's mystified. They criticize, pointing out how he's fallen down on his spiritual program. We can't win. This sort of thing can be avoided. Both father and family are mistaken. Though each side may have some justification, it is of little use to argue and only makes the impasse, this process, this path that we're growing on, right, worse. The family must realize that Dad, though marvelously improved, in other words, he's not drunk, right, is still convalescing. He's still healing, right? We got a broken leg. We're not screaming out, but we're going to walk in a cast for a little while, right? So the family doesn't want him. Why are you in the cast? You can't go out and run with us now. So the family must realize that Father's still, the alcoholic's still healing. A direction. They should be thankful he's sober and be able to be of this world once more. Let them praise his progress. Oh, good for you, Dad. Let him praise his process. Let them remember that his drinking wrought all kinds of damage that they can take long to repair. If they sense these things, they will not take so seriously his periods of crankiness, depression, or apathy, which will disappear when there is, oh, these are the words again, tolerance, love, and spiritual understanding. The head of the house ought to remember that he is mainly to blame for what befell his home. He can square the account in his lifetime, but he must see the danger of over-concentrating on financial success. Trying to make everything all better in just a day or two, right? We found we could not place money first. For us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress. It never preceded it. So let's think about that. So I get sober. I go through a 7-day detox. I'm good. I feel good. I'm not, passing out. I'm good. Now I'm not going to go to those meetings over TLC anymore. No, I don't need to get a sponsor. Don't need to do the steps right now. I went to the detox. I'm good. I get my job back. I start doing. I start, got to get the car, pay for the car that went in the hock. I got to pay for that, arrest that I had. And I'm working. I'm avoiding anything, and I'm getting irritated because now I'm tired and I'm going home. And they're like, now where have you been? Did you drink again? No. And we start, we're not growing spiritually. We're not healing spiritually. We're focused on trying to get back quick everything we lost without healing our spirit. And we know that the only way that we get better is when we heal that spirit, that spiritual healing. I know the only way I knew how to do it was through those steps. So I wasn't able to do it with the money, property, and prestige all coming back. I wasn't able to do that until I stayed spiritually fit. Because you take alcohol away from me, right, early on, it talks about in the doctor's opinion, what happens then? I'm going to be, without alcohol, a little irritated, restless, discontent, and that balloon's going to pop one way or another. And I might be white-knuckling it, what they call, dry drunk. And I'll go a little bit, and I'll go for a little while, but that balloon will pop one way or another. So I either will accept spiritual help, or I'm going to take that drink, that ease and comfort that I see others take. So, although financial recovery is on its way for many of us, we found we could not place money first. For us, material well-being always followed spiritual progress, never preceded it, never came before it. Since the home has suffered more than anything else, it is well that a man exert himself there. We can't just be given back here to the alcoholics. We have to help it, be part of our home. He is not likely to get fare in any direction if he fails to show his unselfishness and love under his own roof. What does it mean to get far if he does? So he's not going to get very far here working his program if he's going home and yelling at everybody and, breaking stuff and still showing, right? Now, we don't turn out perfect, but we have to practice not only here in the room, but we have to practice at home, okay? We know there are difficult wives and families, but man who is getting over alcoholism must remember he did much to make them so. As each member of a resentful family begins to see his shortcomings and admits them to others, he lays his basis for helpful discussion. These family talks will be constructive if they can be carried on without a heated argument, self-pity, self-justification, or resentful criticism. So if we have to have a talk with the family at home, we want to try to remember, sometimes we can run it by a sponsor first before we go home with a heated argument, self-pity. You don't understand, but I have to go to the meetings. My spouse has got me writing this 4-step, and what do you want from me, right? We want to make sure that we're not doing that and heaping on stuff to the family at home, right? So if we have a discussion at home, we want to make sure it's not a heated argument, it's not filled with self-pity, self-justification, yeah but, or resentful criticism. Little by little, mother and children will see they ask too much, and father will see he gives too little. Giving rather than getting will become the guiding principle. Assume, on the other hand, that father has, at the onset, a stirring spiritual experience. Overnight, as it were, he's a different man. He becomes a religious enthusiast. He's preaching about the big book to everybody in the family. He is a different man. He becomes a religious enthusiast. He is unable to focus on anything else. As soon as his sobriety begins to be taken as a matter of course, the family may look at their strange new dad with apprehension, then with irritation. There's talk about spiritual matters, morning, noon, and night. He may demand that the family find God in a hurry or exhibit amazing indifference to them and say he is above worldly consideration. He may tell mother, who has been religious her whole life, that she doesn't know what it's all about and that she'd better get his brand of spirituality while there's still yet time. You can't see any of us doing that, right? All of a sudden we go home and mom or somebody else still has a glass of brandy or a little glass of wine at night and they go to church every day, and we go home and go, you can't drink that. You know that oh no, that's bad. You got to come to the meeting with me. No, I don't know church, you can't do that. You got to come to the meeting with me. We don't do that, but we do. We get so excited, and then we'll talk about it in the morning, we'll talk about it at night, we'll talk about it at family gatherings. We'll tell everybody about what we heard in the daily reflections this morning. People will get a little annoyed. When father takes this task, the family may react unfavorably. They may be jealous of a God who's stolen dad's affections. While grateful that he drinks no more, they may not like the idea that God has accomplished the miracle where they failed. They often forget that father was beyond human aid. We couldn't do it for the family, for the kids, for anybody, right? They may not see where their love and devotion did not straighten him out. Dad is not so spiritual after all, they say. If he means to right his past, why all this concern for everyone else in the world but his own family? Why does he keep going down to that club and going to those meetings and talking to the newcomers and everybody else but us? What about his talk that God will take care of them? They suspect father is a bit balmy, foolishly eccentric, coming up with these new sayings. Think, and easy does it. I don't know what he's talking about now, right? He is not so unbalanced as they may think. Many of us have experienced dad's elation. We have indulged in spiritual intoxication. Like a gaunt prospector, belt drawn over the last ounce of food, our pick struck gold. Nobody raises their hands, right? Everybody knows what that means? These are some of the things I read in the book. I'm like, what is he talking about? So the guy's out there looking for gold. He's starved himself because he's out in, Arizona somewhere, right? And he's looking for, finally he strikes gold. His belt's squashed all the way. He's lost all this weight and his pants are falling off. And all of a sudden he strikes gold and he can go buy some food. Eureka! But that's how we feel when we first get in the rooms, right? We've destroyed our lives. All of a sudden, wow, look at this. bright-eyed and cheery. People hug me and say hello when I come in the room. Amazing. Joy at our release from a lifetime of frustration knew no bounds. Father feels he has struck something better than gold. For a time, he may try to hug the new treasure to himself. He may not see at once that he has barely scratched the limitless load which will pay dividends only if he mines for the rest of his life and insists on giving away the entire project. Does that make sense? So this guy that's finally struck gold, it's almost like rubbing the bottle with the genie and says, you'll just keep getting all the gold you want. You can have all tons. It's just going to keep coming. As long as every time you get some, you give it away. We're talking about with the gifts we get in here. So if the family cooperates, Dad will soon see that he is suffering from a distortion of values. He will perceive that his spiritual growth is lopsided, that for an average man like himself, a spiritual life which does not include his family obligations may not be so perfect after all. If the family will appreciate that Dad's current behavior is but a phase of his development, all will be well. Hopefully they can be patient with us as we're a little neurotic in the beginning of our excitement for our program, right? In the midst of an understanding and sympathetic family, these vagaries of Dad's spiritual infancy will quickly disappear. Vagaries are like unexpected change in the behavior. We get sober, they didn't expect us to get all nutsy at first. All blingy with happy, positive words everywhere, huh? The opposite may happen should the family condemn or criticize. Dad may feel that for years his drinking has placed him in the wrong side of every single argument, but that now he has become a superior person with God on his side. If the family persists in criticism, this fallacy may take still greater hold on Father. Instead of treating the family as he should, he may retreat further into himself and feel he has spiritual justification for doing so. Though the family does not fully agree with Dad's spiritual activities, they should let him have his head. Even if he displays a certain amount of neglect and irresponsibility toward the family, it is well to let him go as far as he likes in helping other alcoholics. During those days of convalescent, getting better, this will do more to ensure his sobriety than anything else. What? The helping of others. Though some of his manifestations are alarming and disagreeable, we think Dad will be on a firmer foundation than the man who is placing business or professional success ahead of his spiritual development. He will be less likely to drink again, and anything is preferable to that. So next week we will read that we are not a glum lot. We absolutely insist on enjoying life. We are not a glum lot. If you want to know why, come back next week when we read the second half of it.